Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you're calling in from. We're glad to have you here today for the next edition of Music Biz's Common Ground webinar series. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm here with the communications team at Music Biz. Glad to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we introduce today's presenter, I have just a couple quick housekeeping notes for y'all. In order to make the most of today's session, be sure to change your chat settings on Zoom to everyone. That'll allow you to network with everybody who's in attendance today. And as usual, we'll always be taking Q&A at the end of today's webinar. The best way to get questions to us to make sure we see them is to use the Q&A feature on your Zoom dashboard. If you click the Q&A button, you'll be able to enter any questions you have, and we'll be able to answer them at the end of the session. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Reminder that this webinar is going to be recorded. It'll be available on Music Biz's website later today. We'll be dropping links in the chat throughout the webinar to give you access to that. It'll be both on the recorded webinar section of our website, as well as the new event recordings page. Outside of today's session, when you're on the Music Biz website, be sure to check out our Music Biz Passport series. It's another free virtual event series we're hosting focused on global events and very much ties into some things we're talking to today. Our next event in that series is free to attend, as I mentioned, and it'll be taking place on October 7th. When you visit our site, you'll be able to register for that, as well as view recordings from our other past Passport series events. While you're at musicbiz.org, you can also check out our full Common Ground webinar series lineup for the rest of 2025, as well as a recording of our kickoff webinar from last week that was hosted by Infinite Catalog. But you're not here for past sessions or future sessions, you're here for today's session. So we're really excited to have such a unique webinar today, focusing on how to break big in Latin America and how to really bring your music globally in such an important market. So we're grateful to have member company Chinello Creative with us, and please welcome Joaquin from the Chinello team. Joaquin, take it away.
Thank you, Henrik. Thank you, everybody that's connected. Thank you. Hello, guys, everybody. I see in the chat, Bruce. Hello, hola, Bruce, and everybody there. So this is our first English presentation internationally, so please bear with us. It'll be presented by us, Chinello. Andres, Paulina, and I specifically. But first and foremost, we'd like to thank Henrik, Elena, Sonia, and everyone at Music Business for hosting us. We are based in Mexico City, and we operate both the US Latino and Mexico markets, having companies in both sides. Our presentation will be short. Our presentation will be around 25 to 30 minutes, and then we can proceed to the question and answer section, where we'll try to answer most of the questions we can. So with that said, let's put it up, please, Andres. And here is our presentation. Hope everyone is ready. The name of our presentation is How to Build a Hit in Latin America Beyond Talent, Strategy, and Brand Building for the Global Music Market. We'd like to say hello, hola, to all the Spanish speakers that's connected, and celebrate the Hispanic Heritage Month starting September 15.
Hey, hello. We are Chinello Creative, a 14-year-old marketing and ad agency working to get recorded music and concerts from our clients heard by more people.
So, as Joaquin mentioned, today we are going to share what we know about the business of music Latin America, especially in a country like Mexico that has become part of the top 10 international markets in this year and alongside Brazil. So here are some key metrics.
Yeah, we thought we can start and share some of the big numbers that most of you are very familiar with. Being the US the main market in the world with 765 billion streams. Then the secondary market group would be composed by India, Mexico, and Brazil. Those are two Latin American countries, accounting for 226 billion streams, Mexico, and then 195 for Brazil approximately. This is to say the US remains the main market in the world, but definitely there's, the secondary markets as a group also make very good numbers. And this is a trend in pretty much all industries. We see this in the movie industry, but definitely in music. These secondary markets like Mexico, Brazil, and the top 10 markets are becoming even more important every time. Another thing that's worth noting is that in Latin America, we might have the view that Latinos consume Latino music and Mexican music in Mexico, and that will be all fine. But we are very happy to note that Spotify just released these numbers a few weeks ago about K-pop being huge in Mexico. And this will give you also an international overview of the Latino markets and the Latin American markets, with K-pop having over 14 million fans in a country like Mexico, growing very rapidly, about 500% in the last 5 years, which is up to par to Mexico becoming one of the top 10 international markets in the world. Also worth noting is, these are artists that you are all very familiar with. These are global artists, 2 Canadian artists, Justin Bieber, The Weeknd. Then you have 2 US artists like Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, and then 1 English artist like Coldplay. And they all share 2 Latin American countries in their top 5 cities, being Mexico City and Sao Paulo in Brazil. Very important. So this is very hard to ignore, right? So we wanted to give you this presentation of how the international market is very important also in the Latin American countries. So now, starting with some of the work that we have done in the past, like Paulina mentioned, we are about to turn 15 years old. We started back in 2011, and we started working with Maná. So this is a picture of Maná, the international rock band with many accolades around the world and tours in many, many, many countries. Back then, in 2011, Facebook was the most relevant social media platform, and we managed to make it a very useful tool for the band to promote their music and their tours. But what's so important about Maná, and this is part of the presentation we're doing here about Latin America, we believe one of the better things about Maná is its brand.
And Maná Boys is about rock and roll, romance, but also about the environment and immigrants. Probably one of the few bands in the 90s that started advocating for the Latino in the US, who now are more than 60 million, and more than 70% are Mexican or from Mexican origins.
So, speaking of Maná, their sound brand also included always very Latin colors as Spanish guitars and requintos, Latin percussions, and they were the international precursors to even bigger brands, such as Colombian brands like Shakira, Juanes, J Balvin. And nowadays, regional Mexican artists like Fuerza Régida and Peso Pluma, clearly, and of course, Benito, right? Bad Bunny from Puerto Rico.
So, going back to me, sorry to make you dizzy with all the roundup. We thought it was going to be fun to do it like that way. Instead of 3 computers, that would be boring. So bear with us with the dizziness. And what they share in common, right? We have artists that are from every country of Latin America. They all started locally. So we want to know that, right? From Maná in Guadalajara to J Balvin in Medellin to Fuerza Régida in California. These are all groups that grew up globally, but they started locally.
As Joaquin mentioned, many of these brands started locally, but really grew once they entered the US market Latin, which, even though Latinos are a minority, overall is a larger and more economical powerful, culturally, concert attendance, and has broken records.
So taking a look into the numbers of the relevance of Latinos in the US, this is a list of the 2024 concerts that made it to the top list, with Mexican artist Luis Miguel, Puerto Rican Bad Bunny, Colombian superstar Karol G, Mexican TV soap opera group Rebelde, RBD is the acronym for Rebelde, which means rebellious, and Aventura from Dominicana, Nueva York. So this is to state also the importance of and the growth of the Latin brand around the globe, especially also in the US. So this might imply that we're saying that the US Latino market is part of Latin America, and although it might be geographically incorrect, this would be good for your strategy, right? Taking into account of all of the Latino presence we have in the United States.
So, the main commonality among Latin Americans is obviously language, right? Since we share Spanish as the main speaking language in our countries, we might have different names for same things, but we share mostly the same background by having Spanish and indigenous ancestry in our roots, most cases. Okay, so let's take a quick overview of the last numbers around Latin America. First of all, in 2023, the streams of Colombian artists increased by 42%. Then in Peru, digital music streaming will increase by more than, will increase at an average rate of 14.8% by year. So it's kind of important. Also in Argentina, the recorded music industry increased by more than 70%. Also in Brazil, recorded music revenue grew by 21% in the first half of 2024. In Chile, streaming represented 89% of their market's income last year. And last but not least, Mexico, with 41% of people spend more than 6 hours per week listening to music, which is more compared to the 35% globally. So all this to say that Latin America is a major and constantly growing market that you should be considering in your campaigns and strategies.
Yeah, especially when releasing music nowadays feels like this. I recently had this come up in my algorithm. So definitely this is what releasing music in Spotify looks or feels like today, right? It's an overcrowded market and there are way too many artists and newcomers uploading music more than ever. So we thought we can share a bit of this. So going on.
So the good thing about this is not only bad news. The good thing is that in Latin America, over 70% of the people have smartphones and 80% are go online through mobile, with Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia leading the digital consumption. When it comes to streaming, it's everything. It makes up 85% of industry revenue in the region, and in Mexico, 94% of the music is consumed digitally. And globally, Latin music is booming. It's growing to 13.4% in 2013 to 2023, and now represents 7.9% of the US market, making it fastest growing genre. So mobile, streaming, and Latin music were all aligned to show the power of these markets.
Yeah. So, well, just going a bit more into the same slide, just as Andres mentioned, the penetration of all these technologies is very, very solid. Also worth noting, and is not in this presentation, the Meta products have 100% penetration in Mexico amongst its many different properties, being Facebook, Meta, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp. So that's a very high rate around the globe that was released this year too. But also talking about the good setting ground of releasing music in Latin America, there's also a bad side, which would be part of the same good news. And it's about the Latin brand being very hot and its best. So it asks you to overcome competition by having higher and better standards. The competition is everywhere, from TV streaming to video games to social media and memes. So never forget about this. And amongst the 120,000 songs that are uploaded each day. So.
Yep. Let's take a look of how yeah, what's the big picture of an artist today trying to release music? First of all, your song can get lost in the noise because of the content saturation. Many release music without a plan or knowing their audience, so there's a lack of strategy. There's inconsistency, only posting when there's a release, a single or an album that no longer works. And then you get frustrated when there's no immediate virality because of the emotional dependence on numbers. And also, there's this connection between social and music because many artists don't know how to turn likes into streaming or ticket sales.
And after looking through these challenges, here's a picture of how most common releases look nowadays. No, so the artists find themselves in a puzzle with every new release, and they say, "Oh my God, the release is this week, and I need my content. Where do I post it?" And they having all these fights with all the creation and all the things that happen in the web, like millions of photos, posts, messages, hundreds of thousands of video. So they at the end get lost and having these likes for the views and the streaming and all the impact in this emotion of the lack of results that they have when they finish promoting their new singles.
Yeah, so this is to portray this that Andres has shared. Can you go back up? The conundrum that goes in the mind of the artists and the teams, and the frustration that goes into really an overwhelming market. So we go and now go next to a few recommendations for getting into shape, right? So getting to a better, well-structured type of setup. We recommend that your product is well-defined and have enough songs recorded. There's many cases that many artists have all these emotions around having one or two songs recorded. That's no longer very useful. So we recommend having a group of songs together. I think having 10 together is a good starting point. And now going into the slide right there, it's about your brand having a greater chance of achieving better results through taking advantage of a better timing situation, planning ahead, and thinking about your brand, your music as a brand experience, how you connect with the audience, what type of messages are you delivering, what kind of engagements are you doing with them. Then thirdly, building anticipation, which has become, I think, today probably one of the most important legs of doing a record release. Doing every pre-release campaign you can do with a well-defined timing. 3 weeks is very optimum to create awareness and expectation campaigns that matter. And this is the phase where you can do all the pre-save, being consistent with your visuals, and building your storytelling from scratch. Then next up is teaming up, right? A lot of artists that are independent are do-it-yourselfers, so they are very used to doing many things by themselves. But an artist grows as their brand grows, as their team grows. So teaming up and understanding there's better people than you out there filling the gaps is very important. And also understand that each platform is a very different channel, and YouTube is very different from Spotify to TikTok to Instagram. So understanding that how you lay out your voice in each of the channels could be different format, but also about the other 4 areas of recommendations we start to talk about right now. So moving on, Andres.
Sí. So a hit is not born from talent alone. It all needs strategy and execution. And also, you need to work with your personal branding, your tone of voice, your visual, your message, your consistency, and trying to build a community, because all these things are key elements to make a strong brand that is gonna be better for long terms. No. So your music is not only releasing and wishing you for the best. We are speaking about constant evolution and planning. getting to know your audience, content, objectives, and more.
Okay. Now, to build a career and a potential hit, you've got to define your long-term vision, which is the addition of many singles and different faces. Also, you have to create visually attractive messaging, work your public relations with platforms. Also, very important to protect your rights through legal advisory and execute paid media the right way. All this will happen alongside your label or distributor.
Yeah, so yeah, just kind of going a bit deeper into this slide about teaming up with the different parts of your structure. It's very important to know that in order to build good relationships with your platforms, everybody wants to be friends with Spotify, YouTube, TikTok. Everybody wants to be a priority. You have to do it through your label, through your distributor, which is the most important ally that you will get for distributing your music. Also, I mean, there's many chances to meeting them directly. I'm sure most of the professionals that are connected here have attended forums, for managers forums, for the Spotify sessions, for all these different type of situations they all do, and there's definitely a good conversation that could go directly, but definitely partner up with your label, your distributor is super important. That's where the long-term vision and the plans are shared. So most of these platforms like structure work, that's, midterm, not so immediate. I'm releasing this song on Tuesday. How can you help me? So this that type of situation that we recommend that. It's also another set of advice that we try to apply with our clients, also sharing the long-term vision, which means do not only think by the single, by the weeks that are ahead. And definitely go get good legal advice. Definitely protecting your rights in every country, in every. I mean, there's international conventions everywhere, but definitely you want to make sure that your name is protected, that your song is protected. There's many international conventions again, but there's different, and a couple of different rules that might vary from country to country. And yeah, again, definitely the importance. And the last point there is how to be strategic. Working with your distributor is super important to this. And most distributors, most labels will always thank you about timing and having the proper timeline set up. And Latin America is no exception to that. Although culturally we might be rushing up a lot of the times, we always try to embed this into the minds of the managers and artists we work with, right? Time is everything to planning ahead. So going back to Paulina, to one of our case studies.
Yes, I'd like to present a bit of our work from last year, 2024, with Basilos, a pop band from Miami with Jorge Villamizar from Colombia and André Lopez from Brazil. They made a comeback album after almost 7 years, commemorating being 30 years in Miami. And the record was launched through the Orchard and management firm Magnus Media, guided by the late of Ana Cristina. She was their manager. So, for the launch of the new album, Pequeños Romances, we built a creative strategy that covered everything from planning to the creation of social media content. Yeah. So, Pequeños Romances marks a return to the band's original sounds. So we developed a strategy focused on nostalgia. We also created visual assets for their YouTube channel, which were later on adapted to being used for their tour visuals. Then the album was very well received, reaching more than 3.6 million streams on Spotify during the release phase. We also supported the promotion of their Pequeños Romances tour, which included dates across United States, Europe, and Latin America, of course. Also, our work included creating visual communications, such as artworks, posters, and teasers, as well as running digital paid media campaigns to boost ticket sales, resulting in several dates being sold out. And one of the most notable achievements was under TikTok, which lacked engagement. So, through a strategy of content from live shows and authentic clips, Basilo's account gained over 25% new followers during the album release, which was pretty good. So, with Pequeños Romances, we not only celebrated Basilo's return to their roots, but also we proved that authentic storytelling and an organized strategy can drive both cultural impact and measurable results.
So here some of the key actions like content heavy strategy, reactivation of the TikTok channel, applying their new visual branding, and supporting communication of their tour. So
Yeah, just before moving ahead, we will provide this presentation at the end to all participants to the PDF, but also there is some external links that we didn't want to break the flow of the presentation right now, but there's a visual storytelling platform called Behance, where we upload a lot of the work and how we develop things. So we will share specifically the Basilos work there, but definitely you can look at many other projects that we have done through the past, and this will be shared for everybody. Perdón, Andrés, going back to you.
yeah, so the talent is essential, but the strategy is what turns a good song into a hit. So you have to plan all the panorama and keep going so you don't miss in the way or the path.
Yep. So again, going back, talent is everything, but strategy is second best, right? So kind of rounding up on the final concepts. I'm sorry to be looking at that screen. That's where we have our presentation. We'd like to round up with a few slides to finish this presentation, which is about to finish. We're 20 some minutes into it. So about the modern media equation and finding the balance in Latin American markets, which might be no exception in the globe, around the globe. Again, it's very international. It's pretty shared among markets, although we all share some of the Latin core values that we believe are of help when speaking to the Latin markets. But again, some of the pillars of the strategy that most of you guys are probably very familiar with are your own media, your own channels, your end media, which is all of the third parties talking about you, and the paid media. There's blurry lines between paid media and earned media now than ever, more than ever, because there could be a lot of paid advertising that looks that's organic. So it's kind of very blurry nowadays. But then definitely understanding that the pillars in this equation are very important to growing your brand, just as in any other market. There's many channels, I would say more than ever in Latin America. Every time, every day, someone sends me a new page for talking about music. It's very impressive, the number of media influencers and all of the press points that are now available nowadays, all the collaborations. It's pretty impressive. So there's a lot of work to do there. So more than ever, also talking about the type of consumer that we have today, the consumer wants to seek brands and individuals with well-defined visions and values to align to their own, right? We all get this every time. You want to wear the brand that you align with the values. You want to work in a company that aligns with your values. So same things happen with the fans and the voice that they're following. They want to understand what their artist stands for, what the brand stands for, and be very proud of following that. So music is a super powerful vehicle to achieving this. Moving on to our Latin American cultural DNA and values that we believe resonate very good across these markets. As we mentioned in the second or third slide, popcorn, palomitas, would be called in Mexico and many other names throughout the region. As different as we are, we also share many common values. And we believe the core values to embrace our family and community, which are very central to decision making. There's always a local pride. Remember, regional identity You know, that's why it's called regional Mexican, because it became regional northern music, regional southern music. Same happens with Colombian vallenato. Same happens with the Colombian national music, with Argentinian folk, and so on and so forth. So trying to understand the regional identities. Also, we are very proud of our cultural heritage, because most of the Latin American countries, again, share this this Spanish and indigenous mix. So we are mestizos. We are a mix of the European Spanish to the Native Americans, which is our indigenous people, nuestros indígenas. And so our history and our traditions matter. And fourth point is openness. We are always very open to international influences while we stay root, and when we can sing rancheras and vallenatos and local folk music, we definitely are very open to international cultures. And, you know, our markets are very welcoming to very international tours from the world. Oasis is probably the most recent example from last weekend, part of the world tour that's, you know, making waves everywhere. So there's also lifestyle elements to be worth note of, such as our food culture is very, very rich everywhere. Latinos, we share a street life. We are en la calle. A lot of the time we're in the street. Yeah, we're on our devices. We're glued to the screen, but definitely the culture is out there. There's many street cultures that, you know, have derived into different tianguis and pulgas and different shops in the street. So our culture is about that too, the type of discovery that we do. And also, as everywhere in the world, we are very pet friendly. And these are part of the elements that we believe weaving this into narrative will strengthen your brand, right? Taking into account this. And just last night, I was speaking to this friend of mine about this metal band from Sweden, which I have it in my Spotify because it was last played, and how they did a cumbia version to get into the street word of mouth, which was kind of smart, right? Because cumbia is probably a national rhythm everywhere, and we share it everywhere. I don't have it, but it's Hala or something like that. I can share it with you guys later. So rounding up for our final slide, I like Paulina to close.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, success in Latin America, it's about finding balance. Respecting the culture while staying true to your artistic vision. Use today's digital tools to consistently amplify your message. Also adapt to local markets without losing your core values. And let your music serve as the cultural bridge between your identity and theirs. So remember, the media mix is your vehicle, but your values are the fuel that will drive lasting growth. And I think that's it.
So I think, yeah, with that, I think
Yeah, we're done.
we're set for the presentation part. Hopefully you guys understood everything from our accent and from our bad pronunciation. But if there's any questions or clarification, please let us know here over in the comment section, the chat thing. And probably Elena or Henry can help us select some of the best questions to answer, you guys.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Paulina. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Joaquin, for taking time today. This was a really insightful presentation. I know I myself am definitely interested to hear about that Swedish metal band who translated their work into Colombian. That sounds amazing. Thank you again for taking the time to share your expertise on the market and where things are and how folks can really take advantage. We do have 2 questions right now, folks. We've got time for conversation. So if you have anything coming up, like feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. Our first question comes in from Felix. Promoting your single in Latin America, are radio stations, both terrestrial and internet, still relevant? What countries have more influence in the US? And specifically, he says that means American radio programmers and playlisters consider giving your single an ad or a listen.
Yeah, so the first part of the question is about radio stations being relevant. I think, yeah, they are. They come into the mix, but at a very final stage, even in major labels. I mean, just recently, and it's worth noting, um, in the past few years, major labels have structured their radio station work as an external agency type of work. It used to be an in-house work, and now it's become more of a agent doing that. But definitely, the audiences are there. I would say there's definitely a segment that goes to radio stations, which might be definitely more adult. Also, the early morning programs have been going forever in the US, in Mexico, starting 5, 6 a.m. That's where a lot of the people start to work, and then go up down to mid day, to noon. So definitely it would be right to a point in your mix, although it's a very expensive investment still, at least in Mexico and in the US. It's not very cheap to do radio. And going to the second part of the question, countries, yeah, definitely. Well, the most important majority within the minority of Latinos, which are around 60, 70 million, is Mexicans. We constitute about 40 million, which is more than half. Should be around 60, 70% of that. All these numbers vary a lot. I haven't seen any very good official numbers from the Pew Research Institute or from Mexican authorities, but it goes around 60 to 70 million to 40 to 50, I mean 36 to 40 million Mexicans, but that would be the main background country that we live in the United States. And the last part I didn't get, but it was about American radio, you said?
So, do American radio programmers and playlisters consider giving your single and adder listing? Basically, what countries have more influence in the US to land on radio programs or playlists? Are there certain Latin American countries that might have priority over? I believe that's the wording of the question.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely going into the US is kind of it's a bigger market. It's also going into very specific playlists. But if I am understanding rightly, yeah, definitely there's ways to getting into that. But there's definitely, I mean, if you're gonna work radio, there's definitely radio promoters to do that. But if you're gonna permeate from from digital playlisting to radio, that's a whole other work. But there's definitely some influence to be taken from some key playlists, right? Like we all know the main Spotify ones, like in the US, there's Rap KVR, and there's the Top Hit List. There's also in Latin America, Viva Latino, which just recently turned 10 years, and it's super influential. So I would say, yes, there's definitely a driver from the digital realm to the real world, radio station, terrestrial antenna, satellite radio, but definitely it's a work that implies a lot of work to getting into those, right? Because Spotify and the big names, Apple, YouTube, are not going to give you a placement in a major playlist without doing the groundwork first. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Our next question comes in from Nicole. She asks, do you recommend that artists create social profiles for specifically Spanish language content, or is it better to integrate that content into their regular posting?
Yeah, I will keep it in the same language, and because you're creating your brand and your message. So when you get followers, they are like going to meet, or they are wanting to learn more about your emotions, your what you do, all your like all the things that involves you as an artist. So I will keep it real, keep it in the language, and you can tropicalize when you are going to that part of the city or country, and to make it feel more appealing, yeah, to that country or people. But I keep it specifically in
Yeah, and work on
language.
the third party. Now this is all of us together. Keeping it on third parties to talk about you. That I think that's important. Your channels you can respect, you can adapt. Obviously, you can subtitle. That it's always of help if your language is English or Swedish or French. It's always a good idea to subtitle, even just in your own English or on your own native Spanish. because not a lot of people use the sound thing. I never use it. So you always read the subtitle. And because we're always doing something else. So subtitles are good, but also consider a third-party campaign, right? Like a public relations campaign, and get third parties to talk about you. That's also smart. It also works in TikTok a lot. And there's also actually some paid media campaigns that you can do through TikTok. They're called Spark ads, where you can get a third party that's, doing a brand collaboration with you, and then you can invest into it and then grow that to grow the voice of the message.
Yeah, and also adding up, right now there are increasing a lot of like plugins into the social media that translate automatically. Facebook and Instagram is translating instantly to the message, so keep it in your language, and the people or the audience can solve and can learn more about that message that you're giving.
Yes.
Thank you both for that. This next question builds on a little bit of what you all touched on with public relations. Riz asks, at what stage of artist development should organic PR be incorporated as a strategy?
Well, we always start from scratch usually. Like right now, I think it's mandatory to have third parties on this, because also, the brand storytelling, the artist storytelling also becomes a thing when you're getting born, right? So why not jump into the wagon with everybody at the same time? So yeah, going to the organic or third party from scratch, I believe smart. If you have the media, if you have the connections. I mean, a lot of people don't. A lot of people are not from the big cities where most of these media are. In Mexico City, there are in Mexico as a country, they're probably the 5, 7 bigger kind of cities where all of the media is. But maybe your project is from this teeny tiny town or from outside and you don't know anybody. But definitely, I mean, that's why agencies work, and there's some local individuals that do too, like agents themselves. But definitely, if you have the connections and the possibilities, having third parties to build your brand, help you build your brand from the beginning is always good. And there's many, many, many discovery sites, that also give a window of opportunity to new projects every time.
Thank you for that. Rosa Maria asks our next question. What are the biggest challenges when breaking Latin hits into Brazil, considering the language barrier and differences in cultural and music production trends?
Well, first of all, we have to say we are not Brazilian specialists. Brazil is a market of its own that consumes over, I would say, 70-80% of national artists. So understanding their culture and their language, they speak Portuguese, which sounds familiar, but we are not the same language. It's a different culture, and it's a very huge country. It's a very huge market. It's always Brazil and Mexico, trying to get the most pie of Latin America. Definitely, there's more permeation of Hispanic artists to Brazil, but definitely there's some challenges still, right? Like just recently, I know this also because my brother lives in Brazil for the last 15 years. So I understand a bit of this. And we also have some friends in Brazil. A shout out to Johanna from this agency, I forgot the name. And I recently met this lady, Giovanna, from this digital agency. It's definitely about pairing up with the right person. What I think about coming into Brazil is getting into the right set of hands. So you need a local specialist that drive you through the market. If there is a special need for that, we can direct you to people if you have a specific project in mind. But definitely, Brazil is huge, music-wise, population-wise, and geographically. So it's a huge market, and definitely there's some guidance even for us, like that we need help to get into.
Thank you for that, Joaquin. We have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Great.
Keep
We've got one from Miguel. Miguel, first of all, has nothing but praise for your team. Great presentation. Gracias, Chinelo team. He'd like to know, beyond growth among Latino audiences in the US and Mexico, are there other markets that are currently driving growth that we should prioritize?
Yeah, there's definitely markets that are growing. Like, culturally, Mexico had always been like, and Brazil, have been very important because of all the national telecommunications were before the internet, very relevant through Latin America. You have a TV show like Chespirito going very, very international to the national audiences of Latin America and even worldwide. That even made it to Brazil, actually. It's called Chaves in Brazil, El Chavo. But definitely looking at Colombia as a powerhouse for breaking artists, it's Colombia is one of the best examples, and Argentina, of what new emerging artists are coming from. Even though their size of the market could be smaller, their influence is super impactful, super big. Also, this going back and forth to the United States is very important. I believe like all the success stories of Colombia, from Shakira to Juanes to Maluma to J Balvin. I mean, their list is huge. They're amazing. It's about growing a local brand, then pairing up to the international audiences, mostly through the Miami Gateway, but usually trying to transform this into a very international local scene. So looking at Colombia and Argentina, I would think is the best route to look at. But also you have Chile as a very important market that's been forever. Actually, there's some report from this year by our friends at Music Ally in London from 2025. Also, Peru is growing like crazy. There's many others. I would say technological benefits and that are bringing more growth, but also it would be very surprising to note what's going to Central America. Like I recently, well, within the last couple of years, have discovered bands from places that you never heard of, like Nicaragua, Honduras, or well, Costa Rica has always been a thing, like say from Central America, but like from the smaller, teeny tiny countries, there are many things going. So yeah, looking at markets, I think it's worth looking at Colombia, Argentina, Chile, but then culturally, there's many things happening everywhere, from teeny tiny towns that no one ever thought, of things becoming very, very relevant.
All right. Our final question for today comes in from Felix. He asks about the trend of artists recording bilingual music. Is this becoming more and more popular, or is this still a bit of a challenge to this based on executing this style?
Well, we don't have the exact numbers. We can tell you definitely, especially in a neighbor country like Mexico to the United States, is very important. The whole bilingual thing. I've seen it as more like ad libs, more like shoutouts within the songs. But there's definitely a trend for this, and I think the most important trend right now would be about Mexican Americans who are fully bilingual. I just recently heard, for example, and I recommend you going into Apple Music Radio, there's the Fuerza Regida interview by Zane Lowe. I know it's actually this other dude. I forgot his name. Ebro. Yeah, that guy interviewed Fuerza Regida, and it was all a bilingual thing, which was actually very, very impactful for me to listen to, because it's a major channel that's usually in English for the United States audience, and they were like going back and forth. So I believe recording in bilingual would be good if that's where your audience is. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and play or try to pretend, but definitely if it's within the DNA of the artist, it's a thing to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joaquin. Again, thank you to the whole Chinelo team for being here today. Paulina, Andreas, Joaquin, we really appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise with us today. And folks, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. For those couple of questions we missed at the end here, I'll be sure to send them over to the Chinelo team to get answered. We'll also be sure that they have your contact so that way they can send over a copy of today's presentation as we discussed. Again, very grateful not only to have you all as members, but for you to spend your time with us today. It is super appreciated.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're more than happy. I think we can fit all here. And hopefully that turning around didn't make you dizzy.
And thanks again, everybody, for joining us for today's Common Ground webinar. We hope to see you in 2 weeks for our next session. All have a great rest of your day.